All right. All right, so meeting has been called to order. We'll go ahead and review the agenda and ask if there are any additions or recommended changes. Everyone had a chance to look at this. So obviously the main topic of today is to finish up the review of the draft Title 43 rules and the notice. Do we have anybody from the public online?
You have look like at least Seth Tate was the guest.
I guess I'll ask if there's anything, any public participation for items that are not on the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move forward and allow comments during the topic. That sounds good. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the April 28th meeting minutes. Everybody had a chance to look those over. They were a little more extensive than normal, but very detailed, very clear and concise.
2-hour meeting.
2-hour meeting. Did anybody have any changes? All right, hearing none, I would take a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a second. Second. All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Consider that closed out. Move on to the board meeting overview.
Yes, so I can give this update for everybody. So for the May board meeting, which was on May 14th, kind of had a normal start to the agenda. One thing that was shared with the board that I'll share with the CAC here as well, our finance manager, Christina Ward, who I don't know how much overlap the CAC has had with Christina. I think she's been here a couple times. Her last day with the organization was at the end of April. So we are in transition of the finance manager role at this point in time. We had a position posted that closed, and we're now in the candidate review and have some interviews that we're scheduling and coming up. And so looking forward to fill that position. So it was a little bit of the Travis show for the May meeting as I took a lot of the those items onto my docket. We did pass the budget for fiscal year 27 at the last board meeting, which was great. Had a public hearing there, did not have any public participation or any comments. So we were able to pass that through resolution 2603. I also shared an update with the board on resolution 2601, which was a resolution the board passed in response to an audit finding that we had. It was a repeat audit finding from the prior year where we had our subsidiary ledgers not matching with their general ledgers. The intent was to update the board with the resolution to that issue. Unfortunately, we were unable to have that issue in Cassell, our finance software, be fixed. Still need to work out that subsidiary mapping against the general ledger. Inform the board that is a process that is essentially on hold now that we are interim between finance managers. Effectively, what we need is to have our financial monthly reconciliations being done and kept up with so we can engage with Cassell, the software vendor, so they can kind of check our math against their math and we can find where some of those misalignments are so they can update that. So I'm hoping that we can resolve this before the end of this fiscal year, but knowing that the end of June is coming up pretty quick, I was preparing the board with that will likely be another audit finding in this fiscal year that we're in right now, because I do not believe we'll be able to resolve that before this fiscal year is over. Also shared with the board a presentation that Matt put together, which I really appreciated, on air toxics in Cleaner Oregon. So air toxics are hazardous air pollutants that we sample for. We used to have 2 sampling sites, but a couple of years ago, because the cost and challenge of lab work, that is now just 1, which is at Highway 99 and Elmira. Talked a little bit about what that sampling looks like. Every 6 days, we take a sample, get it sent out to lab work, how that stacks and compares to kind of regions, and then transitioned into Cleaner Air Oregon to share about that program, which is the state program that's used to regulate those air toxic contaminants that we monitor for. Gave a status update on where businesses were kind of moving through the process as well. And then shifted to the director's report, which is here in the board packet for everybody. Something I did point out to the board that I'll mention here because it's kind of interesting is we had all good days of air quality in the month of May or April. However, even though still in good 2 of those days, thank you, Matt. There you can see for Eugene, Springfield, and Cottage Grove was actually ozone was the driving pollutant. We are getting into ozone season, which is a secondary form of pollution, which means it is created via chemical reaction in the air. So when we have our sunny days and our hot days, that mixes with the volatile organic compounds in the air and creates that kind of brown ozone cloud. So we are in ozone season as we get into the summertime. And then talked about future board agenda items with the board and planning to bring kind of a revenue opportunity discussion with the board in June, as well as preparing for an executive session in June as well with the board, wanting to understand some of the transitions that LRAPA is seeing at the moment. And that's kind of the quick overview of the board meeting, but I can answer more or engage further.
I guess Heather's gone as well. I'm not
Yes,
sure if
that's
mentioning.
worth mentioning here as well, wasn't there? So Heather Gravel, she also is not with LRAPA any longer. So currently have a position open for an environmental coordinator role that closes June 5th. We have received a number of applicants for that role as well. So looking forward to bring someone in who'll be able to support the board as well as the CAC in the way that Heather was doing.
Any questions? I'll just mention that in regards to the monitoring, one of the board did ask about the second station that used to be. And one of the things that we kind of talked about were comparing the results and maybe sharing that information. But there was interest in bringing that back with the potential, but with budget constraints, that was something that, I remember our CAC actually got to go on a field trip to that monitoring up off of Amazon. It was one of our first field trips and it was very cool to see. So given that we've had so much turnover, there may be opportunity in the future to go see the other, to the existing monitoring station, because it was really very informative and neat to
That's
see.
the one in the dog park.
It was,
Yes,
yeah.
that we still have, we do some particulate matter monitoring. We no longer do our hazardous airplane sampling there. The story, which I'll just share for the CAC, is so we had to, and the approach was that LRAPA bought the equipment for the 2 sites, and then DEQ, Oregon DEQ, would do the lab work for that. But because of capacity constraints and budget constraints, DEQ did not have as much open capacity to do the 2 sampling. The site that was Amazon then was at Oak Ridge for a little bit. Most recently was at the Youth Farm at Gateway in Springfield. That is a nice to have, but not a needed. And the one that's needed is the Highway 99 and Elmira sampler. So DEQ, in an effort to save costs, reduced the lab work they did. And so the board's question was, could LRAPA take on that cost to do the lab work ourselves, which we could, but that would eat into our budget, and a majority of our budget right now is in personnel services. And so I was against that idea without any new funding to support that program. So.
Yeah, especially given the results and the cost benefit ratio there of like how much additional information are you actually gathering compared to the other one, which I think was pretty good.
Yes, Springfield, Youth Farm, Amazon, and then Highway 99, all were kind of relatively comparable to one another, to where you could say that it's almost the noise essentially of what that difference is. Where there was some significant notable difference was when we actually put it up in Oak Ridge for a season and got some wildfire smoke, and that was where you have some big comparables. But for our region and the way that you do ambient air monitoring, it was comparable to one another. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. Great. Any comments from people online? Any questions?
We had another CAC member, Jesse, was able to join us as well. So we have everybody minus Peter, who had been excused, and Chris. So we have a whole kit and caboodle.
Right. think we will move on to our next topic. Having heard no comments, we can get right into the review draft of the asbestos rule updates and then also the notice for proposed rulemaking. So today's focus, might kind of tag team this with Matt, is to really kind of go over what we, the input that we've provided, the changes that have been incorporated, kind of touching base on the high level items, to see if we think we're ready, for this to go on to the next step. So, if we want to kind of take this and go through, Matt? You want me to?
Yeah.
You're probably a little more familiar. I mean, I had a chance to look at it in the order and whatnot, but.
I don't want to put Colleen on the spot, but I know that Colleen had done a lot of work with our team to respond to some of the feedback and whatnot. So Colleen, I was just going to reference this document just to specify the things that you all had kind of adjusted or whatnot. Would you like to lead that then?
I mean, you wrote it out.
Great. I think we can talk through it. So like, Colleen, on the updated definitions for the asbestos containing waste. So we made a change here. And so what was kind of our thought process on that? Or
This goes back to the sampling method, right? To be able to allow for the other type. Is that my understanding?
Yes,
Like
well,
being able to,
because there was the, Mike, was that his name? He indicated that like, if we were to say, well, we want to do this polarized light microscopy. Yes, Northwest Hazmat didn't have the capacity to do that as is. So we had some reflection on how we want to write that wording. And so, our asbestos group went back and essentially said that we can request the transmission electronic microscopy.
Microscopy.
Thank you.
Easy for you to say.
See how, so that's something we can request, but the PLM is something that we will allow.
okay.
Yeah.
Which sounds like that was one of the bigger things that would impact the fiscal, right? And the
Yes.
timeline.
Would have, yeah.
So now this is kind of allowing that.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you want, so how from us programmatically would we kind of view the PLM versus the TM? In terms of like, we'd have the ability to say, we think that we would like to ask for you to go and do the TEM in this particular context or circumstance.
Well, say you do a survey and the survey is coming up less than 1%. And there's still concern that maybe there is asbestos in it, they can take additional samples. If they're still coming up less than 1%, they can take them out for TEM. Also, when we go out and do an inspection, we can pull samples ourselves and have them TEM too. So
it's not a requirement, but it still provides that
Yeah.
opportunity, that flexibility if
Yeah.
we feel there's a reason to want to get that extra level of certainty.
and it says may, so it doesn't mean we're going to be out there saying
Right.
do both testings. It's just if there's a concern that we still believe there's asbestos in it.
Right. No, this should alleviate a lot of that concern that we heard.
Yeah, that was a good flag for us last meeting.
We did drop that weight
Yes.
entirely.
Yeah.
Great.
On the updated owner occupant, so we kind of had some clarification there. So now if it's like, if the person is, or a portion of it is used, rented or leased, then that is not owner occupied. And then if the structure is intended for demolition. And then on residential, this one was a pretty easy one. We just added RVs and trailers in the definition for residential.
Camp trailers, not just trailers.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, this continues to be an issue in the news, even with them, with tow companies and whatnot. So I think it's good to have that in there now. Who pays for it? Because it's my understanding now, tow companies are not towing them.
I
They don't want
believe
them on their yard.
a lot of times when there is an RV that has asbestos that's abandoned, I think it depends on where it's abandoned and who kind of has to take that bill. But I think at the moment, a lot of that falls on the county of having to figure out how to attend to that.
That is my understanding. Yeah, apparently there was one this past weekend that has been down in the property for about 8 months and somebody dragged it onto
Oh,
to get to it, so it's not on there. So it's just an interesting dynamic, but I think this will at least help with understanding what is needed for that. So great addition.
and then the notification fee for non-asbestos projects. So that one was trying to catch my brain up on this one.
We added that is for mostly the Title V that are affected by it.
Yes.
They submit a demolition notification to us and there's no fee
Okay,
directed.
yes, we clarified that.
Yeah, and it was a little confusing because it specifically said that the notice wouldn't be complete without a fee.
Right.
So that's where
Yeah.
outlining that there's not a fee can show that it's complete. So that's
We also used consistency through our authorized landfill throughout to make sure that all of those are being used the same words. That helps to provide that clarity. The fee table, which last time that was we didn't attach this, because in our rules, like if you go onto our website, we have a whole extra place where you can just kind of pull that up, but it's technically within the Title 43. Also made sure that our record retention is updated correctly throughout 5 years. In the crosswalk, there was a typo that we adjusted there. And then the fiscal impact in the notice of proposed rulemaking, that has been addressed with that negative pressure question, which essentially is these rules that we're changing to in Title 43 are not new requirements. We're not making any new requirements. We are just changing the language to make it more clear that these are the requirements, which always have been the requirements. So as far as what does that cost to a business in terms of meeting the mark, it's more of it always should have been this mark. And if there was any perception that there was a saving, so to speak, it was, well, then you were not meeting what the requirement was. So we clarified that nuance more in the notice of proposal making. And that's the quick kind of feedback that we took and the actions or responses we had based off that informal feedback from the last meeting.
any comments on those changes? I'll just say that looks great. You guys, I think, addressed those in a clear, concise way. So
Well, we continue to kind of internally, when it's not in the public forum, we have had a lot of appreciation for how this process has gone. There's been a lot of like good questions that have had us like reflect on things at a different angle that we hadn't seen before. And by and large, I do think that Title 43, as we bring this to public comment, is in a good spot. And that's been because of this nice dialogue we've had.
So I looked through the red line a little bit, saw, most things were changed. I guess this is just for my own personal information, because in one part it talks about wetting with liquid and almost everywhere else it says water. Is there, just for my knowledge, a different liquid that can be used?
I was just thinking the same thing when I was reading it yesterday.
Liquid would be used.
Is it not Christian?
Are there other things that you can wet it with? Like,
Well, sometimes the contractor will add an adhesive to the water.
Bind it together.
Okay.
Yes. So we don't want to get too specific,
Okay.
but
no, that's, no, it's just saying.
if they wanted to use something like milk or.
I mean, I guess that's a question, is it can basically, as long as it's
It's
wet,
wet.
it really doesn't much matter what the liquid is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the intent is it's like to, increase the weight of what would that be that particle that could float around. And so if it's saturated in liquid, it's going to be heavier. And if that liquid is milk,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, but we skated down kind of how the EPA uses that language and they stick with liquid kind
Yeah,
of
most
as
of them
well.
do.
Well, that makes sense. A binder of some sort could be
Yeah.
incorporated into it for added and retention, so it doesn't just evaporate out if you had some other component. So,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
good to know.
Max, our operations manager, had jokingly said, well, you could get the champagne. Standard water.
How much of a fee do you want?
Yeah.
We're not fee, but how big of an invoice?
Well, and not without making it more mess with something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Or without making it hazardous.
Well, that's true too.
Use something containing something that's an additional pollutant.
Or flammable or whatever the case may be.
All right, so, do we want to move on to if there were any other
Yeah, I guess-
outstanding items that were not addressed? Does anybody have anything, that you felt we didn't quite get to yet on the updates? Hearing none, I guess how about the notice of proposed rulemaking? So that's what we wanted to spend a little bit more time on today. I know we did touch base on it last meeting. We had a chance to kind of go through it, but I think we're really feeling like that we're pretty much ready for that next step. And so, we'd like to get some input on the notice and if there were.
Yeah, if I can, Kelly, if I could just give some kind of context for folks. So this is really the intent is to be the more plain language breakdown of what we're doing in our changing these rules for the public to see. Because yes, Title 43, like from just it can be kind of confusing and like, wait, I gotta go here and then gotta switch pages back to there and so on and so forth. The NPR is intended to kind of really just be that here's what's changing, here's the general sense. So that way an informed individual who's reading through it could say, okay, I want to actually take that extra deeper dive into some of the red lines specifically and see what those changes are. Also, they can then be prepared to provide us with a formal comment. So what the CAC would be potentially being agreeable to today is to give us to feel ready to bring this before the board of directors to say, hey, we would like to put these rules on public notice, put it out for public comment for a period of time, and then we can hold a hearing for the board to say we adopt these rules here locally in Lane County. So the perspective is from does this make sense for a general person who may see this because they're on our website and see that it's up for public notice.
Okay.
So that's the intent to it.
And I think the section that would be the most prudent to really zero in on if we were looking to it would be the statement of fiscal and economic impact, because that's the one that I think would have the most concern just before we put out to make sure that because there was at one point concern is, with your adjustments on the full enclosure, that has a bigger cost, right? But then as Travis explained, we have actually been enforcing, LRAPA has been enforcing in Lane County for quite some time that that's our expectation. So we don't anticipate that any contractor would be incurring more costs because when we go out and inspect sites, we're expecting to see that, or they have requested a variance. So.
And what page was that on?
That's page 143 in the packet. Page 143 in the packet, or page 17 of just the NPR itself is where that section begins. I think really it kind of in summary, it's just saying that it really doesn't have any significant fiscal impact for all of the constituents that are listed there, local governments, public, large businesses, small businesses, state agencies, et cetera. So unless there was thoughts from folks online or in the room, the whole document we're discussing, but that was the one that I think would very easily cause the most consternation if we felt like we didn't address that correctly.
So part of what's in there is a breakdown of businesses with more than 50 employees, businesses with fewer 50 employees, and how does that reflect on, what these changes would be on those different institutions. Same thing with the public. And by and large, we're not expecting there to be significant financial costs. We're not adjusting the fees in any way. And then kind of as Matt said, just kind of say it again, I guess, is the perception that these are new requirements. I would say I don't see them as new requirements. It's just clear language of what has always been required. So what's being asked is the same. There's less opportunity to see different.
Look at this.
Well, I did have one comment prior, and that's the explanation of the businesses. I thought, because it's not until you get down under small businesses bullet point A that it actually talks about the 425 projects and then how many businesses.
Mhm.
Whereas you get up into the large business and it says approximately 45, it might be better to preface it with the explanation of the major, like, because down here it actually gives, you know, that there are approximately 135 licensed contractors. The majority of these are small. They're approximately 4 to 5. And so that's actually kind of preempts the description above, just from like kind of setting it, in my opinion, might be a little bit better to kind of describe how many there are, how many are large, how many are small, and then have the breakdown. But it's not actually
Yeah, no, I agree.
critical.
So basically, if you're, some of the language that's in the large business, or some of the language in the small business A is applicable to kind of large business.
That would have helped you understand a little bit more when you're reading approximately 4 to 5, and you're not sure if that's the normal, the average, whereas it explains it below.
Gotcha, gotcha, yeah. So more nuance of when you're reading large business to say
Yeah,
that,
you could have the description and then the kind of the breakdown.
Yep.
But it's actually really nice to see that breakdown. I wouldn't have thought of that. So it's really beneficial to see.
And as a person who's spent a bit of time in discussing housing, having been on planning commission, et cetera, I really like the discussion of the housing fund. I think that would be smart to break that into 2 sections too, for new development and for perhaps for remodeling or working on existing housing. But as it is, it's a great statement.
so what you're trying to say that, Mike, is a little bit more of a, because in our rules, we have the year 2004. If it's kind of older than that date, then there's an assumption that there should be more asbestos in there. And so you should do more surveying if it's newer than 2004.
You can say almost, you break it down by saying under new development, we anticipate no additional costs.
Yeah.
For any reason, and then to have a little bit more discussion regarding renovation, demolition, and working on existing structures.
I like that.
Because it is, I mean, it is, if you're buying a home that is before that 2004 date as an informed buyer, you would probably want to know how, if any, asbestos could be in that home, because then, yes, if you're like, this wall is horrible and I bought this house and I have my mortgage payment, I have my budget, that's then set, and then you decide you want to do that, take that wall out, and then there could be this abatement cost that was not necessarily seen yet.
And there's a lot of discussion in government circles about housing costs. So you're going to see a lot of people say everything you do increases the cost of housing. Well, no, this would definitely not increase the cost of most housing. And so that, I think, would be a real positive statement to lead with.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there something in the chat?
Oh. Oh, yeah, that's right. They were moving down to closer to Pisgah, I believe, was where they were shifted. I kind of remember some of those details. Yeah.
That was from Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All right. Any other comments? I thought it was great. I really appreciate things being put more in layman's terms. And people can decide if they want to delve into it like that. I will say still, just because I think this is a little bit of a niche with people who are in asbestos and the contractors, that even still, the clearer that we can be for like the homeowner level that are renting out in the duplex, the clearer we can be. And Matt mentioned even having like a brochure of like putting things into more layman's terms, because it still is a lot of legalese and trying to figure out exactly, especially with the different headings, you see these different components, but making sure that they understand exactly what that would mean.
Right. And it can be really challenging sometimes too in that asbestos communication space, which Matt, I know that you talked with Robbie and others about this, and we've talked about it, is there's kind of like, what is the best practice versus what is the legal right and requirements? And I think that it's important for us as an organization that we're always speaking to the best practices of what we would recommend people to do from a public health perspective, but we still similarly should be making clear for people what they know, what their actual requirements are, even if those requirements aren't quite what we would recommend as best practices. And where this kind of comes up a lot of times, that the homeowner occupant who's able to do abatement in their own home is, if you want to, I mean, our best practice would always be just to hire someone to go do it because there's a health component. But then once you are doing that abatement, what you're required to versus what practices, there can be nuance too. So making sure that clarity exists is important.
Yeah, and having, I think it would be almost like the guidance we did for the 2-cycle engines, having something of like that actually presents the best practices, or things like, just so you know, if you do it yourself, the dump may still ask, probably will still ask
It
for
will.
verification. Also putting a little thing in there that was mentioned last time about the, like, if you think you might want to sell your house in the future, having this documentation and doing it this route is highly recommended for, because, the question came up of like, well, if they did a remodel, how would I know?
Right.
And like, you wouldn't, but
No.
we could have a best practice of that would be always smart for, home values to show that this was done, or those types of things would be really pretty neat to see. So I don't think it's as common knowledge with this particular thing, compared to other permits, other applications, asbestos. I think people just start
I think a lot of people,
getting into it.
I think a lot of people heard the word and are aware that it's not good,
Mhm.
and that's where it stops,
Mhm.
right? And then you're like, well, how do you deal with it?
What are you supposed to do?
Rules? Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I learned a lot about asbestos when I started working. Yeah.
Yeah.
More than I knew.
And again, it's not always intentional. They just really don't know. And so I love the idea of merging the musts versus the recommendations. I think that would be really great for people to see.
There's so many misconceptions still out there. People think, oh, and since the house was built before 1972, 1972 means nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's some weird information floating around on the internet about,
Yeah.
About when asbestos was kind of stopped being used, but it hasn't
it
stopped.
was never
It's
stopped.
never stopped.
Mhm.
Right.
So it's really deceptive on that type of thing. I
Yeah, there
remember-
was a law, but it immediately got.
Wasn't you, and I'm
Domestic production was
I'm-
stopped at one point.
yes, I'm
but
iffy on the
yeah.
specifics of the date and the year, but it was that you could no longer produce asbestos in the United States, but you could still ship asbestos into the United States, so.
It can be confusing online. I remember looking it up and trying to, I'll just call it.
Well, good. That's what we're doing.
It's true, it's true. All right, so thoughts on the notice? Any other feedback, you guys, online? Guess the question is, do we feel like it's basically ready to go to the board for the next step?
Yeah, so in this process part of the CAC as an advising council to the board is interested in knowing, because the board hasn't gone through all of the work that the CAC has to really at detail review this. And so I think that I'm operating off of a little bit of an inference here, but I believe that the board would be uncomfortable with moving forward into public notice if the CAC did not also feel comfortable moving forward into public notice. So that is kind of the question here before the group is, do we, or does the CAC feel that we are at the stage where it's appropriate for us to solicit the board and ask to put these on public comment for the public hearing with the intent of changing Title 43 to the rules here as presented?
Should we do a roll vote? Not that formal.
Well, I mean, it's, if someone came to take question to it, then that formality is helpful. So we could go through and do it that way, but I don't know if it's a requirement.
If there'd be any opportunity for any of the people who are absent today to be on notice that if they had anything,
Yeah,
any input to get it to, that say we could tentatively, as a group here today, say we're all for this, allow a day or two for additional to weigh in if they felt they.
yeah, I think that what we could do is if we receive any of that other feedback, I would say that we probably direct that to the chair. And then through that, we can decide if that warrants a change to the general, agreement of the room, or if not.
I'm feeling that because this would go to public comment anyways, that there would be opportunity, so we don't necessarily need to hold this up, especially since we've gotten good feedback. And I'll also say that email. There are several people on our CAC that are fairly not responsive to email, so I'm not sure that it would get to them on time anyways. I think what we could do and what I'd like to see is if we feel like it's ready with this group and we have a quorum to proceed, one thing that I would be interested in for the CAC is based on public comments that we, if there's anything substantial, or I'd be interested in following along with that.
Yeah.
To see if there's anything that, raises a big red flag that we should have caught or need to, reevaluate. And then it would open it, we would be involved in that public comment.
Yeah.
Well, I think that what we could do is, because if we go out to public comment and we receive some comments, part of our required process is we have to formally respond to those formal comments that are received. And in that process, if the comment we receive is substantive, meaning it has there's oh no, that is a fair point, essentially, then we have to respond in any way. Which one is we say we're not responding to the comment because it wasn't substantive, or it is substantive, and then here's our formal response as to what we didn't do, or here's our formal response into what we did do, and we can still make those changes, and the board can still adopt those changes based off what that comment is. And then I think that the CAC wouldn't have a mechanism to still participate in that, but we could keep you informed as to what those comments are and what the responses were.
That sound good? Okay. Yeah, just staying informed, I guess, would just be nice at,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as I sort of said a few minutes ago, internally, there's been a lot of gratitude in terms of the discussion that it's prompted and the recognition of where clarity would really be helpful. And there's been a few nuggets that we've been able to find. So that's been great.
Yeah, it's interesting participating in other DEQ, public comment period, and sometimes I'll comment on something and somebody's comment or the response triggers additional questions, and nothing stops us as individuals from, digging in the public comments as well as just being kind of in the loop on what's going on. So.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well,
Thank you, all of you, for your help with this. It certainly has made it a much better rule, so appreciate it.
Travis, would you like Kelly to do just a quick
Yeah.
motion and do all that?
I
Yeah.
would appreciate kind of the one by one. That would be.
I think it would be helpful. So
Yes.
I guess what I'm gonna do, we'll go around and we'll just ask members of the CAC if you agree on a yay to that we're ready to move this forward.
I think maybe
I need
what
a
we would
motion.
do is maybe we could entertain a motion to forward our rulemaking package to the board for consideration of a public hearing.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that are we calling this document again?
Title 43.
No, not Title 43,
House rulemaking.
Yeah, the notice
Yes.
for proposed rulemaking.
but the notice, yeah, as well. That be forwarded with the suggested changes that were made today.
Gotcha.
So forwarded as amended, and the 43 be forwarded as currently written.
So Title 43 to be forwarded to the board with suggested changes implemented.
Suggested changes to the notice.
NPR.
I think we decided that 43 was
Yeah.
okey-dokey. Okay.
Perfect. So we have a second. Right. Any discussion? All right, then I think what we'll do is we'll go around and do a roll call vote. Let's see. Joe? You agree with the motion? Perfect. Ben? Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Ben. Paul?
Aye.
You? Jesse?
our audio, or we maybe
I'm
with
guessing it's
silent?
our audio.
Oh,
Oh.
there you go.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right, Evelina?
I,
I'm also an I. All right. Oh, thank you, Joe. All right, well, that's all in favor. So thank you. That one. I guess we're ready to move on. All right, so we're a little ahead of schedule, which is nice. Upcoming topics.
And this is no longer accurate because Travis may be able to better.
Yes, I can explain. So our intent was to move into a rulemaking for Title 15. However, we will have another rulemaking we will be inserting before Title 15. It's a permitting update. So Max, our operations manager, has a number of titles. It's a couple of them. That's not just one.
Oh, okay.
We're going through a rulemaking package at the moment, and he's ready to move that forward and actually kind of ahead of our Title 15 preparedness to engage with the CAC. So we'll be shifting into that permit rulemaking package, I think is kind of a way that we can phrase it or call it. And that will include a kind of presentation to the CAC. This will be more in the permitting space. So the approach I think will engage, which we have done with the CAC in the past, before I was in my current role, is we talk about like, here's the changes we're making to kind of keep up with stringency for DEQ. Here's the things that we're doing because we believe this is a good thing to do. And so breaking it down in that different approach for the CAC too, in a structured way that we've used in the past that have been helpful for discussion about technical rules that is even more technical than even the Title 43 asbestos rulemaking. But that is at the next CAC meeting, our June 1 is one that will be.
And there is some fees as well, correct?
Yes, there are some fee adjustments, fee increases that will be in that rulemaking package as well. To our state fees, our ACDP fees will be looking to change as.
Do we anticipate that there will be multiple at the same meeting, or are we going to be breaking it down depending on?
I think so. In the past, we've gone through this. We have been able to move through it with one CAC meeting, but that is something that's not us setting an expectation. That is really the CAC. If the CAC is uncomfortable with it moving forward, like that's a flag to raise for us, and we can kind of give more space and time for those questions.
I guess what I would request, that would be helpful, I think, for everybody on the CAC would be to be sent the existing titles that are being changed. That way we can familiarize ourselves with them, see how thick of a package it is, and then we'll also be able to understand the changes if we have, I mean, even if we don't all get through them, it'll at least give a baseline for what to expect. And then we can decide, depending on what we get in the email, whether we might try to do a 2-hour meeting, because we had talked about that
Yes.
for Title 15.
Yes.
So whether that, I mean, because that in a way expedites it a month by giving us an extra hour. So if that sounds good to you guys.
that's perfect. Actually, I'm not gonna be able to attend June's meeting. I'll be out of the country, but I'll send the email reminder.
If we could get red lines at the same time, that'd be even more useful.
Yeah,
That it would,
yes, for sure.
if nothing else.
Yeah.
Let's not wait for those.
Well, I think so one of the things with, we have, what I appreciate about Max's process is he's good about, like, as time goes on, like saving, we'll save this red line. While we're not currently in a rulemaking right now, we can write down this change now. And then the next time we do that rulemaking, we kind of pull them together. And then there are items where it's like, well, the state has made some changes. And so now we need to make changes just to make sure that we're up to keep. And on some of those, that's usually where there's less productive time with the CAC when you can, we're happy to answer and entertain questions as to why are we making this change. But sometimes the answer can be, well, because the state's doing it this way and we have to do it the way the state's doing it, to say it kind of plainly. So kind of pulling out those nuances is helpful in making us able to move through some of those adjustments.
All right, well, we will plan June for that. Maybe 2 hours. We'll see how many titles we're talking about. If it's just a couple, how many pages. And then we have a few other ideas for upcoming topics. Does anybody have anything to add? I would just add that maybe a field trip to the monitoring could be kind of a neat thing to do, get us out there and actually see some of the equipment in action.
But if we have that in June, I think that it would be, because there's no meeting in July for the CAC, or August, excuse me. There's a meeting in July, and then the next would be September. So depending on the way, I think September still can be pretty good. October, late October would be in the CAC. That's when it starts to maybe the weather getting a little bit less than ideal. So I think that like definitely a July or September should be the target date for that.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes that's what a few other advisories and when they have a month off, that's when they'll do a field trip.
Or we could,
So it
Yeah.
might be an option
To do
as
an
like a,
August one?
you know, to do in August. If LRAPA staff has the ability to
I
do
think
that,
that we could.
because then we're not actually having to detract
things
from
around.
our regular meetings.
And Jessie just noted in the chat that she likes that idea.
Perfect, great. All right, well, I think that we can move on. If nobody has any other ideas, we can move on to roundtable. So why don't we go ahead and start with folks online? Joe, have any updates or?
I can't think of any update to give you all right now. Well, no, I can. I don't know if I've shared with you all, Matt knows this, that I've had to step back a lot from the education work I was doing around wildfire smoke, mitigating the health impacts from wildfire smoke, but still in the game when I can. And so next week I'll be co-presenting to the Quality Care Connections, which is the group that does the education and connection to the state level regulations for daycare and childcare providers. They're based out of LCC, and they have received funding from Oregon Health Authority to do some education around wildfire smoke and helping daycare and childcare providers be more prepared and able to protect the health of their charges. So we'll be doing a presentation. I'll be co-presenting with Dr. Murthy, who is the director for the Community Health Centers of Lane County, to that group. It kind of is kicking off their, I think they're calling it the Smoke Ready certification. Does that sound right, Matt? Yeah. So just letting you know that that's happening. Matt's been a great support, and we're able to continue sharing out that AQI guidance that I think you've all seen, that just in very simple graphic, simple graphics shows the different behavior changes and awareness to have around different AQI levels to share with, especially folks who have young kids, but really helpful for anyone just to better understand the different levels and what you should be thinking about at each one.
Was that open to the public or is that for a specific group?
It is, that presentation is specifically for the daycare and childcare providers that they, have as members. They're starting, I think it's maybe like I don't know how many parts, but they're going to be part of a series just to learn more. And they're going to have a certification kind of thing that they could then put, like a decal kind of thing they could put on their actual center to let families and others know that they have taken actions, maybe a policy that they have in place for what actions will take at different AQI levels. Maybe they have a smoke grade HVAC system installed. There's all those different things that they will be learning about and hopefully connecting with as far as information and resources out there. But public stuff, I'm trying to think if there's anything on the books that I'm aware of. I'll be doing some preparedness fairs coming up. There's one in Oak Ridge on June 5th, and I'll be having some materials about AQI specific to wildfire smoke at the table I'll be running. And I'll keep the group aware. Like if I see, if myself or somebody else is going to be doing more like a public presentation of some sort, I'll let you know.
Joe, is that June 5th in Oak Ridge? Is that the Wildfire Expo?
Yeah, I guess that is what they're calling it, not preparedness per se. But yes, on Friday evening. Will you be there?
Actually, I will be occupied with interviews on that day, so I will not be. But otherwise, I intended to. But I think
I will be there. Yep.
Awesome. All right. I'll see you there. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Paul, did you have a question or comment on that? Saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I saw that EPA is going to be retiring their diesel generators that they use, to create electricity for the grid by recovering the methane out of the Short Mountain landfill. And they're going to start cleaning up that methane and putting it back into the natural gas grid. And I'm just wondering, how is that going to affect the permit fees that they pay?
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit. So we know that EPA is looking to make those changes. And so currently they have a Title V operating permit. And so once those operations change, then they will not need to have that level of permit. What those operations look like, I believe they still will need to potentially be permitted. I don't know that for certain, but yes, we're aware of that change in their operations. And when they do make that, that will be a reduction to the level of permit that they hold with us.
Okay, so those permits are based on the actual emissions from the engines, not based on the amount of methane that they were recovering. Is that correct?
Right. So for a Title V permit, you have a threshold of emissions that you surpass. It's like 100 tons of a criteria pollutant, and then there's a 25 tons of a single HAP or multiple HAPs, or I'm starting to get to the, I know there's a specific answer to that, but essentially, yes, there's a threshold to over a certain amount of emissions, then you crash or cross that Title V threshold. And with these changes to EPUD, they would be going below that threshold.
Okay.
So that's an upcoming item in the next couple of years that they'll be making that change.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Paul. Ben? Roundtable?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Jesse?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Thank you. Evelina?
I was just wondering, while we're on the subject of asbestos, that in the past, there were water lines that were installed that were made out of this product called Francite. That's asbestos concrete. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I know that has nothing to do with air quality, but just what is the safety in that? Does anyone have any information about whether asbestos leaching out into your drinking water is
I can't
a hazard?
speak to asbestos in the water. I would know that like if something's not friable, then it's not a hazard. But once it starts to be crumbly and friable, then from an air medium, that is a hazard. But on the water quality side of things, I'm out of my technical depth on that. Colleen, do you have any insight in there?
Yeah, I don't know what
Yeah.
happens then, but transite, yeah, generally is non-friable.
Well, it
And
wears out quicker than other concretes.
it does, and so
Yes.
there's been a lot of replacement around the cities, so
Mhm.
transite siding before it goes bad, so that's good to know.
I would also say that when generally there's demolition of concrete because of the silica component, wetting is already
Mhm.
a component of that. So in that regard, it shouldn't be airborne, even if they're breaking it up.
Yeah, I know they do water when they saw it,
Mhm.
if they're adapting pipe or something.
Yeah.
They do run water on it too.
I don't know like what asbestos would be from like a toxicity of ingesting it. Cause if you're drinking it, you're not breathing it, so it's not going into your lungs, but what level that is, that's the water medium, which, a lot of times water folks will come to air and then air folks will go to water and to land. And those are kind of the three: water, air, land, but, I'm most familiar with air. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. And then I will just remind people who have other employees that it's that time of year to talk about wildfire smoke, the AQI, health hazards of working outside. Wilders always has new younger people coming in, and it's really, I just want to say, the receptiveness to some of these younger people with understanding the hazards and being responsive to it is pretty impressive. They're pretty excited when I showed them the AQI and how they could look it up. So it's a wonderful tool. I just want to give kudos to all of, to LRAPA again for the simplicity of that and being able to reference it and even go to the home to see, to see the breakdown of what they mean. It definitely is something that is intriguing people and they're paying attention. So it's great. And that's it.
I think as a quick roundtable from our end, Matt, it was June 1st when outdoor burning season, when fire season begins, I guess, is June 1st.
So, Chief Wallace wanted to be clear, they may not be calling it the beginning of fire season officially, but that they wanted outdoor burning to end regardless, May 31st. So I think it's just for official distinction. The Lane Fire Board in concert with Oregon Department of Forestry have determined that the risk that outdoor burning poses to potential wildfires, the balance is now shifted to where that will stop May 31st, 6 p.m. will be the last bit for all of Lane County. And then starting June 1st forward until we hear otherwise, it is not going to be allowed in Lane County. So yeah.
That makes sense, given our current status. Did you guys see the Blackwell fire, Central Point stuff going on last night?
Last night I was familiar with
Yeah,
over in
industrial
Central
fire.
Oregon, north of Prineville. There's, I think it starts with a Z. There's a fire up there, but there must be another one new that I need to update myself.
Yeah, it's, well, and it had spread to like a not forest products, but like some sort of like soil and like,
Oh,
yeah. But not sure that's where it started.
Well, it sure
looked
looked
pretty
like
big.
all I saw in the news looked like it was pallets and
yeah.
wood products burning.
This is a nugget I'm out of.
What town or what city?
Central Point,
Central
yeah,
Point.
Southern Oregon.
Hmm.
They had the evacuation ranges and everything, like it, which isn't it's in
Huge
a
wind,
developed area,
Huge wind,
so
too.
anyways.
Did see Jesse had her hand up for a second.
Jesse.
Yeah, I use the Watch Duty app, and it seems to be not showing everything. Like I'll see fires that people are like showing video. I'm watching this fire right now, and I'll go check on there, and it's not there. Is anybody else noticing that, or is there a better app to use?
No, I always was like watch because my favorite and my personal preference is I go to the fire and smoke map because I just like how that information is displayed. But then when it does start to get into wildfire season, I'm wanting actual like tangible information about wildfires. Watch Duty is kind of the resource that I find myself using. So if you're noting some like not as updated updates on that, that's interesting. Because yeah, that's a great resource that I use.
I'll have to check.
Yeah,
I believe
it's not being very updated very well at all, and that this is the first year that I've noticed that. I checked to make sure I wasn't missing updates or anything, and I'm not. But
Who operates that?
It's a 503c, so it's a nonprofit. I'm not sure where they're based out of, but they've grown immensely over the last couple of years. So yeah, and we'll see how this season goes, I guess.
Because part of their methodology was they actually were listening to the radio traffic and whatnot and learning that way and then getting it onto the app. So that was where what Jesse's noting is that they were really fast, like, something in real time it was
Wow.
getting added.
The state operated one in California, Cal Fire. It's just excellent. I mean, but it's run by the states. One other little quick thing, the audits and financial information. There's been some stuff in the news lately about that it's not actually state law to be audited. And a couple of municipalities have been dropping the ball year after year after year. But it's really wonderful to see that LRAPA is keeping up on the financial responsibility because, as a taxpayer supported entity, it's just it's an essential thing to be able to show people if they have questions. So
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I see an audit. So the audit's all about financial controls to where it's like if dollars are being moved, is there 2 eyes or more on it to make sure that to minimize the opportunity for fraud, which for any business is super
Mistakes.
important. But in a public organization, it's even more of an important item. We have under our 2 CFR Part 200 requirements, we handle enough federal dollars that we're required to have a single federal audit every year. But even without that requirement, I think we would still go through that audit process because it's really a best practice opportunity too, in terms of making sure from that internal financial controls, you're hitting the mark. A healthy thing that we'll continue to do.
And it's not just about fraud too. It's about, gross or even minor mistakes.
Yes, well,
They found there was a municipality here that they found their budget was, I can't remember the municipality, but they were $4 million out of whack a little small community too. It's like, oops, and they hadn't been auditing for years.
That can be a headache that I would like us to avoid for sure. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. It's 1:02, so without further ado, we will adjourn the meeting until next time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting in